various functions she has performed with great mastery will ensure the success of the work she has taken on since the beginning of this month of September. I also would like to congratulate her predecessor, His Excellency Philemon Yang, for the assertive manner in which he presided over the General Assembly during the past year, having devoted his utmost dedication to ensuring that this body should operate with commendable efficiency, a fact that rightfully deserves our collective recognition in light of the positive outcomes achieved throughout his tenure. I cannot fail to acknowledge His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for the role that he has so ably played with a profound sense of commitment underpinned by his admirable qualities as a man of dialogue and peace amid prevailing geopolitical complexities. Madam President, Excellencies, 80 years have elapsed since, compelled by imperatives of that era, a group of nations and their respective leaders took the wise decision to establish the United Nations organization, which from that moment, through both turbulent and peaceful instances, had succeeded in fulfilling its great mission of maintaining the global peace and stability, contributing to the advancement of humanity and to preserve and deepen respect for human rights. This is a great achievement of the peoples of our planet, which cannot and must not be neglected and underestimated by any power, political leaders, or by anyone, lest by magnifying egocentric visions and interests, we forfeit the benefits of peace bequeathed to us by women and men who, over time, led us so far in an environment of harmony and global understanding. This journey has not always been linear, yet, in the most critical moments, prudence has prevailed over the Western impulses of large scale conflict, and this has been possible solely through continual dialogue, which has proven to be the only factor capable of bridging differences, overcoming obstacles, and appeasing even the most troubled and belligerent spirits. Today, these lessons from the past are of great value and must serve as our sole references that guide us toward solution to the conflicts in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, in Asia, and wherever they may arise. Under the context of uncertainty in which we celebrate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, the theme Better Together 80 years and beyond for peace, development, and human rights holds a significance that compels us to reflect upon the profound meaning of the appeal by Her Excellency the President of General Assembly for the renewal of multilateralism and solidarity in action within a framework of collective and complementary undertakings by a more agile, effective, and responsible UN as envisaged in the roadmap of the Secretary General's Initiative 80. In light of these perspectives, it is urgent that we revitalize the United Nations and lift it from the complex situation in which it finds itself currently in order to restore the active role that he has always played, a strongly valuable role that, during the Cold War, gave us assurance of never feeling as close to a global conflict as we do at this moment amid the profound dissonance prevailing in international relations. The main world powers appear to be turning their backs on one another, distancing themselves from even the most basic points of convergence that would allow them to remain committed to, above all, to the dialogue and concerted action. Today's challenges confront us with a choice, either to do everything in our power to preserve peace or to face war with all its consequences, thus jeopardizing the future of humanity. Those world powers that in the past played a crucial role in the liberation of Europe and its people from the clutches of Nazism and fascism, as well as in the liberation of Africa and its people from the apartheid regime in South Africa, cannot today act differently by aggressing other countries, invading and annexing foreign territories, nor by financing or organizing upheavals that could cause the to the overthrow of legitimate governments as we currently witness in our own continent. With this dangerous precedent, no regional, continental, or global institution will henceforth have the moral authority to call any state to reason when it breaches the principles that govern the UN Charter and international law. We Africans from countries that endured centuries of colonization perhaps understand better than anyone else the importance of peace, for we have had to face daily struggles to provide our people with food, clean water, healthcare, education, and other fundamental necessities. This experience engenders heightened sensitivity to the harmful impact of that insecurity and instability have on the attainment of our goals and developmental projects. This reality is further exacerbated by numerous conflicts and wars afflicting countries and regions across the globe from which we had hoped to find cooperation and fruitful exchanges, so that together we might overcome our difficulties and contribute with our immense resources and capabilities to global prosperity. It is upon this foundation that the Republic of Angola has sought to make an earnest and genuine contribution to resolving the conflict in the Sahel region, in Sudan, and in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, regarding which our efforts established a negotiation framework with peace solution that regrettably did not come to fruition in December 2024 as anticipated, but nonetheless remains a valid platform for further efforts being undertaken with the aim of bringing a definitive end to that conflict. Madam President, Excellencies, that conflict and so many others that we recall are to a large extent the result of passivity of the United Nations member states who have often revealed themselves to be ineffective in the face of invasion of third party territories and interference in internal affairs of sovereign countries that occurred over the recent years and have not provoked a firm, resolute, and assertive reaction, therefore have become fait accompli that lie at the very center of the major tensions that the world is currently experiencing. The consequences of these are very evident before our eyes in the Middle East, where the systematic failure to comply with the relevant UN Security Council resolution regarding the creation of the State of Palestine has perpetuated a conflict that worsens with each day passing and appears to have no end in sight in face of this proportionate and violent response and retaliation by Israel, which, while having a right to exist as a state and to demand the release of those still held hostage from the tragic events of October 7th, must not, however, be allowed to pursue in Palestine and particularly in the Gaza Strip a policy of extermination of a whole people. The Palestinian people, who must not be conflated with Hamas, for there is no peoples and certainly no children who are terrorists, has precisely the same right to an independent sovereign state where they may assert their culture, safeguard for the future, and provide predictable and secure prospects for their youth. The concerns surrounding that conflict grow ever more severely in the face of silence, hesitations, and timid response of the international community, which seems to legitimize the expansion of war to other countries in the region, inexorably corroding the authority of the United Nations. There is nothing more serious than
Hey,
the exclusion of
Eric,
the delegation of
can you hear me?
Palestine from this forum, where
How
it should
how's this sound on your end?
rightly have the opportunity to make its voice heard as member state in accordance with the terms of the host agreement. The failure to guarantee the presence of the president of the Palestinian Authority at this General Assembly sends a profoundly negative signal as it encourages the continuation of genocide we all are witnessing helplessly and with impunity, which delays the resolution of the issue and complicates the efforts that have been made to bring an end to that intricate conflict. We strongly condemn this unilateral position, which is contrary to the principles that govern the United Nations, even as we urge unconditional lifting of the unjust and prolonged embargo against Cuba, which has dire consequences for the economy and the living conditions of the Cuban people who struggle daily to withstand a punishment rejected by the international community as a whole. Cuba, which played an important role in the struggle of African peoples, leading to the overthrow of the racist and inhuman apartheid regime in South Africa, and by virtue of this was a signatory to the New York Peace Accord of December 22nd, 1988, which brought.
Okay, folks. Eric, can you share that news with us? You said there's a breaking news regarding former President George Weah home being on fire. Is that accurate? I know you kind of you made mention of it. And Share, can you just confirm that information is accurate for the sake of our listening audience? And if that is an information that is being shared on the radio as well, since you are in studio in Liberia. Eric, are you following? Can you hear me? Eric? I think we will try to get. You are on. You can see yourself right on there. Eric, you see yourself right on the screen over there. You just muted yourself. Don't mute yourself. There you go. You just unmuted yourself. Are you talking? All right, I'm just gonna go carry the I'm just gonna bring. You're not talking, Eric. If you're talking, I will be able to see that you're talking here. I see that you're not talking. Hmm. can't be talking and I'm not hearing anything. All right, I'm gonna go back. Let's go back to the UNGA here.
It is in the light of face of the present challenges and the ongoing global crisis that the United Nations
What is this thing
must
doing?
emerge and become more proactive, lest its role as the main entity for global governance be diminished and be transformed into an institution incapable of ensuring world peace. Therefore, it is our responsibility as states and sovereign nations not to allow the UN to succumb. The United Nations, in its present form, is the sole organization with capacity to act on behalf of all of us in the quest for worldwide consensus in favor of peace, with the legitimacy to call to reason those member states who undermine its foundational principles in their conduct on the international stage. For this reason, we must preserve it at all cost and adapt it to the realities of the contemporary world through the urgently required reforms. In this most particular regard, I advocate for the reform of the Security Council in line with common African positions set forth in the Esalen Consensus and in the CERT Declaration adopted 20 years ago, which called for 2 permanent seats and 5 non-permanent seats for the African continent in an expanded Security Council that is more representative and consistent with the contemporary geopolitical realities. Without this indispensable step, which has already experienced an unjustified delay, we will not be able to ensure the realization of the Pact for the Future adopted last year, which recognized the urgent need to endow the United Nations with a more democratic and balanced Security Council. This pact represents a significant opportunity to revitalize multilateralism, rendering it more inclusive and capable of serving as a broader foundation for discussion on critical issues facing today's world. Amongst these, I wish to underscore, alongside many other relevant issues, the issue of financing for development and climate challenge. With regard to matters concerning support for development, there remains much to be discussed, but also it's appropriate to recognize the recent progress achieved with the adoption of the Seville commitment reached at the fourth conference on financing for development, which advocates the urgent reform of international financial institutions so as to render them more representative, inclusive, and equipped to address the pressing needs of the developing countries, especially those of Africa. I am convinced that this instrument, combined with a Pact for the Future, the United Nations Fiscal Convention and the United Nations Debt Convention, still under discussion, will together serve as a political, financial, and normative platform that will provide significant momentum to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Madam President, Excellencies, it is essential that we confront the climate crisis as the greatest existential threat of our time, which can only be overcome through joint, coordinated, and united action. In view of the ongoing increase of global warming and the increasingly violent, frequent natural disasters, it has become imperative that the nations that which derived the greatest benefits from industrial and economic development in the past fully assume today the historical responsibility, ensuring, as an act of climate justice, adequate financing technology transfer, and support for adaptation and mitigation for the developing countries. The countries with only residual share in greenhouse gas emissions are those that disproportionately and virtually alone face the impact of climate change, global warming, and the devastating effects on agriculture, food security, and public health. In view of such a arising therefrom, Angola remains steadfastly committed to the Paris Agreement and to the implementing adaptation and mitigation measures in an alignment with the United Nations 2030 Agenda and the African Union 2063 Agenda, which enshrine the consensus concerning the mobilization of predictable, affordable climate financing intended to ensure a just energy transition capable of protecting the most vulnerable communities. This cross cutting theme, which demands increasingly heightened sense of responsibility both within the scope of public agendas and among major industrial corporations, will receive due attention at the forthcoming COP30 climate summit to be held shortly in Brazil, which for the second time hosts an event of this magnitude, a testament to the country's commitment and engagement with environmental issues.
Okay, Eric, you should be good now, right? You can unmute yourself and talk just to confirm we're good. You're still playing music, Eric. Eric, you got to turn the music off. Eric, you cannot.
Aspired by humanity. Excellencies, 80 years after the founding of the United Nations and following the end of the Cold War, our expectation was that we would be living in a world without present uncertainties and not as perilous as that which we now witness. Until 1991, we lived in a context marked by sharp division between two ideologically opposed blocs, which nevertheless offered a more predictable framework and was less susceptible to drifting into large scale confrontation. This flashback should not lead us to the conclusion that the global stability is only possible within a framework of rigid divisions of any kind. Rather, it should inspire us to build a system based on balanced interest and shared concern on matters pertaining to global security that fosters complementarity and all forms of convergence within an environment of multilateralism, which remains the sole
Eric, can you hear me?
pathway capable of preserving us from
Eric,
a true catastrophe. With
Are you
these
getting me?
few words, I
now I can
thank
hear you,
you
but
for
you got
your
to turn
kind
the music in
attention.
and back over
Hello,
again.
Julius. Are you getting me?
On behalf of the
Yes,
Assembly,
I'm
I wish
getting
to
you for
thank
your
the
music is in the chat.
President of the Republic of
Julius,
Angola.
are you getting me, Julius?
Yes,
The
All
Assembly will
right.
hear an address
Okay.
by
So,
His Excellency
she's
Joseph
will
Noah
the
she's
first
already coming
Boakai,
out.
president
You can't
President
speak
of the
now. He's about
Republic
to
of
come on.
Liberia. I request protocol
will
to
the
support
president be
His
the next to speak?
Excellency
Yes, he's
and
coming on
invite him
already,
to
Eric.
address the
Okay,
Assembly.
okay, okay, okay.
What are you doing?
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, His Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm honored to address the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly on behalf of the people of Liberia. 8 decades after its founding, in which Liberia was involved, our country is proud that the United Nations remains the most critical multilateral platform for international cooperation and collective action. The UN continues to employ the best framework of humanity for peace, justice, security, dignity, and shared prosperity. Madam President, please accept the congratulations from the delegation of Liberia on your assumption of the esteemed office of President of the 80th session of the General Assembly. We trust in your leadership to guide the affairs of this august body. We also extend our commendation to your predecessor for his stewardship on the 79th session, and are grateful to the Secretary General for his leadership. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, please accept the gratitude of the Liberian government and the people for the overwhelming trust demonstrated by the General Assembly members in electing Liberia to serve on the non-permanent seat of the United Nations Security Council for the 2026-2027 term. This marks Liberia's first full term on the UN Security Council, 80 years after the country signed the charter in Herbst Theater Auditorium in San Francisco. While the nameplate during this 2-year term will read Liberia, the seat, however, belongs to Africa. We are committed to ensuring that Liberia's contribution to the Security Council discussions and the decisions are shaped by hard-earned experiences in conflict resolution, as well as our successes in peace building, democratic reform, political transition, and governance. Additionally, the collective experience of the continent will be taken into consideration. Liberia looks forward to advocating for Africa's fair representation on the UN Security Council, which can only be achieved through permanent representation as a key part of the UN Security Council reform agenda. Excellencies, when the UN was founded in 1945, nations came together in the belief that peace could only be secured through cooperation. After 2 world wars, it became a widely held conviction that nations are stronger when united than when divided. 80 years later, that conviction is being tested like never before. From wars and displacement to terrorism, threats to technological advances, climate change, and widening inequalities, today our world faces challenges that no country can solve alone. At the same time, and paradoxically, when the world needs to strengthen multilateralism, its credibility and efficacy have been questioned. As one of the 4 African countries to sign the Charter of the United Nations, Liberia feels morally obligated to call for renewal rather than reversal of multilateralism. Reversal of multilateralism is not an option for a just and peaceful world. We call for greater inclusion, effectiveness, and respect for international law, recognizing that the credibility of the United Nations depends on our ability to act together in the service of humanity rather than apart in the pursuit of narrow interests. Madam President, wars in Europe, Middle East, and Africa remind us that peace is often fragile and must be constantly defended. Therefore, as in 1945, Liberia once again reaffirms its commitment to the dialogue, diplomacy, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. In this spirit, Liberia supports all credible mediation efforts aimed at resolving conflict between Russia and Ukraine, as well as Israel-Palestinian conflict. Liberia stands on a common African position for the realization of the two-state solution, where Israel and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security in accordance with international law and the relevant UN resolutions. We call on the international community to act together decisively to protect civilians, hold perpetrators of atrocities accountable, and strengthen mediation efforts. Rising from the ruins of civil war, Liberia knows all too well that human cause of conflict and importance of peace. Since 2003, Liberia has experienced 3 peaceful and orderly democratic transitions, each marked by a smooth transfer of power, making our nation safer, more stable, and more secure after over 30 years of unrest, instability, and destruction. Liberians have also worked hard to achieve this through multilateral cooperation with support from ECOWAS, the African Union, and the United Nations. Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for Liberia, climate change is not a distant threat, but a present reality. Rising seas are eroding our coast, wildstorms and heavy rain devastate communities, threaten lives and livelihoods, and exacerbate food insecurity. Yet, we are acting. We are carrying our coastal defense project, developing climate information system for early warning systems, finalizing our carbon market policies, and advancing the blue economy safety. But our efforts alone are not enough. We urge implementation of the Paris Agreement, full capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and greater global investment in adaptation and mitigation. Above all, we call for climate justice. Those who contribute the least to these crises should not be forced to suffer the most. Madam President, Excellencies, too many development nations spend more on debt servicing than on health or education. The current international financial architecture is unresponsive to this reality, making it not only outdated, but also unjust and defiant of the objectives of shared prosperity and development, the pursuit of which the United Nations was created. Liberia, therefore, joins the Global South in calling for urgent reform to the international financial architecture to ensure fair representation, a new approach to debt servicing, and financing that supports sustainable development. Shared prosperity requires a system that truly leaves no nation behind. Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at home, inclusive development remains our top priority. To this end, our government has launched the Arrest Agenda for Inclusive Development, which focuses on agriculture and food security, roads and infrastructure, rule of law and good governance, education and skill development, sanitation and health, tourism, technology, and innovation. The Arrest Agenda aligns with our National Vision 2030, which aims to transform Liberia into a lower middle income country and lay the foundation for a capable state by 2030. Through this agenda, we are committed to improving the livelihoods, reducing inequality, and ensuring that every Liberian benefits from the dividends of peace and development. We are taking tangible steps to improve governance by implementing accountability and anti-terrorism corruption measures such as asset declaration. We are strengthening institutional capacity to promote integrity, transparency, and improve public service delivery. Everywhere has endured some of the darkest chapters of human suffering, having experienced one of the most brutal conflicts in recent history. Over the past 2 decades, we have remained firmly on the path of recovery, working to heal our nation and rebuild from the painful legacy of war. My government has taken deliberate, meaningful steps toward national reconciliation. These include honoring the memory of the victims, supporting initiatives for memorialization, and upholding the commitment to justice and the rule of law. While we recognize that these efforts are complex and challenging, they are essential steps towards achieving lasting peace and genuine national healing. May I now take the opportunity to renew my government's request for the international support and assistance in establishing a war and economic crimes court, which will further the Liberian people's aspiration for national healing and reconciliation through justice. Madam President, for the United Nations to remain relevant and practical, it must adapt. Liberia therefore supports the Pact for the Future and Global Digital Compact. We also call on the UN that more responsive and reflective of today's world, using outdated 1945 solutions to tackle 2025 challenges is neither reasonable nor realistic. Regarding sustainable development goals, we agree that our collective progress is too slow. However, reaching the SDGs targets remains a vital effort as ever. We therefore urge that the timely achievement of the SDGs be treated as a global emergency. Consequently, Liberia will submit its next voluntary national review in 2026, committing to accelerate the implementation of the global goals in line with the African Union's Agenda 2063 and ECOWAS Vision 2050. Finally, Excellencies, the theme of this session, Better Together, aptly captures both the spirit and the urgency of our time. The challenges before us are immense, so too must be the collective capacity to overcome them. Liberia pledges to remain a bridge to peace, a development partner, and a defender of human rights. Over the next 80 years, we will continue to honor the promise of 1945 by renewing our commitment to a world where peace is just, development is inclusive, and dignity is universal. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Liberia. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Felix Antoine Tshisekedi Chilombo, President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
All right, guys, that was the voice of President Joseph Numa Boakai. I think we have concluded at this point. Eric, if you were able to carry us from here, I think we're good. Just let me know what's going on so we can cut it at night. Eric, are you still in studio? And if you're talking, Eric, I can't hear you if you're talking. So, but we should be good to go now. We'll just end here, and then we will hopefully be back. Thanks to all of you on Voice of Liberia Radio 104.1 FM. We appreciate you all for being a part of today's broadcast. You all have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful morning. For those of you in Liberia, and for those of you here in the Dallas Pride, we say you all have yourselves a good night. All right.